One Piece chapter 1123 is here. We had a bit of a discussion about this on my Patreon when I did my reading of this chapter, about if this is the final chapter of Egghead. Personally, it doesn't feel like it to me, but a lot of people were saying that it did feel like this was it for them because we've officially left the island. End of arc. So what do you think? I'm curious. Do you feel like this is the end of the arc, or do you think we still have one more to go? Well, I'll talk more about why it feels like one more in a little bit. But anyway, the chapter begins with picking back up with, after the knot has been released, the most supreme haki, the greatest, strongest haki we've ever seen, maybe, compared to Shanks, has been unleashed. Our enemy ships have been knocked out, or rather our enemy troops, the military has been completely knocked out. Everyone except, well, we know Saturn because he was knocked out of his yokai form, but he's still standing. And now we know also S-Snake, which does make sense because the Seraphim have been built to be, designed to be the strongest creation, the strongest beings ever to exist. They are like the epitome of human performance. So it would make sense that even some of potentially the strongest haki ever released, she would be able to withstand it. I imagine all the Seraphim are still standing. But we have this picture of Luffy shouting back at Emmett, shouting back at the Iron Giant, "Thank you, Giant Robo!" And then we have the Iron Giant smoking, fire in the background, dirty, obviously exhausted and worn down. Honestly, it makes me really sad, especially after that little flashback we got of Emmett as a child and the joy that he felt being around Joy Boy, being protected by Joy Boy, the desire to see him again and to not be lonely in the future. I am very attached to this Robo, and because it meant so much to him to be able to see, to hear the remnants of Joy Boy within Luffy and to feel that connection and to be able to fight for him one more time because that was so meaningful to him. I want him to not just have being able to fight for the will of Joy Boy or for the similarity of Joy Boy, but also to be able to have that human connection, that bond. Like I want to take Iron Giant with us. I want him to come along. I'm very sad to leave him behind with nothing but an elder as company. And like what's Saturn gonna do? You know, like the Iron Giant is very worn down at this point. He's very tired. And I do worry that after he successfully got Luffy out of there, that he won't feel the need to continue fighting anymore. So is Saturn now going to take the Iron Giant back to Mary Joa with him to be properly deconstructed? Because that's what he was supposed to happen way back when the Iron Giant was found 200 years ago. The scientists were instructed to dismantle the Iron Giant, and they disobeyed direct orders because they wanted to study it, because they wanted to advance science. And so now for the Iron Giant weakened and having felt like he fulfilled his role to be in the hands of an elder, you know what I mean? Like I don't want his end to be taken back to the Celestial Dragons to be dismantled piece by piece. It makes me really sad. Like I know we were all expecting a sacrifice at the end of this arc, and that's exactly what we got, but I don't want that. Like I don't want it. I want it to end at the sacrifice, with Atlas's sacrifice and with the Iron Giant's sacrifice, and then we're done. I don't want then a dismantling to come after that. Anyway, the celebration is incredible. I do love this panel of the Viking ship with the Sunny close behind, going through the waters as everybody else has passed out, and the island in the background, and they're going forth shouting, "Set sail to Elbaf! Rah!" They're all excited. They're celebrating. We have a close-up of Bonnie, who is in her true form, hugging her dad joyfully, happily, incredibly sweet. We have the Straw Hats celebrating alongside the Giants. We have Nami trying to care for Luffy, which I feel like Chopper could take that role too, but he is celebrating with the Giants too. And then we have who is reflecting on the orders that were given to him. He said, What you said back there just doesn't sit right with me. Was this what you wanted, Vegapunk? I couldn't hear everything, but you said some pretty outrageous stuff. So the fact that back in well, I guess we'll get to that. Let me talk about this chronologically. So it was quite the reveal to me that Shaka, Pythagoras, and Vegapunk, that the Stella, were able to piece together that not only were they betrayed by one of their own, but that it was York, that they actually knew. And it was interesting to me. It didn't all add up. So I am glad we got this little flashback here, because between them knowing we're about to be killed, the CP0 is after us, they're going to kill me because I've been researching the Void Sentry, that got out somehow. Like, the fact that they knew that, but they didn't know how it got out or who it was that jeopardized them. The fact that they knew that there was a traitor among them, or rather they figured that out, but they didn't know who it was. The fact that they wanted to create that video recording, but they only made the recording for these three that were for Shaka, Pythagoras, and Stella, and they didn't tell the rest of them that they were going to do the recording. They didn't involve them in it, and York didn't know that the recording happened either. Like, the fact that all of that was kind of muddled together, that was something that I was waiting for an explanation on. And I do think that this explanation was really satisfying because it kind of tied up all those loose ends and answered a lot of those questions that were still hanging. I still have many questions, honestly. Like, in this arc, there are still a lot of questions that I'm like, okay, but what about this? And a lot of those I probably won't be getting answers for, but I do think that some of this would have been pretty unsatisfying if we left it without this chapter. I do find it really funny that they so adamantly were sure it was Lilith, which is reasonable because one, she's evil. Like, her core base characteristic that she was split and personified as was evil. Plus, a lot of the interactions that we saw with York when something would not go her way, or when someone was trying to get on their island, or the test that they were trying to do would get interrupted, her first response was, "I'ma kill him. Excuse me, let me go." Like, she was violence, even though we had a violence. Even though we had an Atlas, Lilith was like, was I'm going to the extreme, was her like initial gut reaction to a lot of things. So imagine living day in and day out with someone whose initial emotional response to anything not going her way is death to you then, versus living day to day with someone who's just, you know, eating, drinking, pooping, or rather eating, sleeping, pooping. The point is, I really don't fault them for going Lilith first, but, and I do want, and I'm going to talk about this more, I have been writing up this video as like an analysis on Vegapunk, all of the satellites as well as Vegapunk himself. I've been having so much fun writing it. I've been rereading the arc and picking apart little details. Super excited to get it to you, though now that we're at the end of the arc, it's going to be pushed back a little bit because we have a lot of end of arc videos to come. But I do wonder if the reason Lilith was suspected, but her evilness manifests in, you know, stealing, plundering, sabotaging in small ways, and an initial reaction to be that of evil inclination, but she never actually truly is evil. She's more of like a pirate. And outside of that, she works well with the other Vegapunks and with the Straw Hats, and she generally tries to move forward towards the good of them all. So Lilith's response to things, they think, oh, naturally the evil one is doing the evil acts, but she's not. What's doing the evil acts is greed. And I do wonder if that's because for Vegapunk, the evil side of him, like true, pure, concentrated evil, really just isn't a big piece of him, like the core of who Vegapunk is. Something that Vegapunk said, I'm kind of talking to you as if this is the Vegapunk video, so excuse me for a second, but something Vegapunk said is that each of them is an expert in one of my necessary facets. All 6 of them together possess one complete copy of my personality. And then in this chapter, he said, I should have never tried to isolate greed from the human mind. Yeah, You really shouldn't have. You probably shouldn't have tried to isolate any of your base instincts and characteristics from the rest of you. I feel like you should have picked up on that being a bad plan, like from the jump, but you didn't. So this is what we're dealing with. But anyway, this is greed isolated, and this is part of his, what did I just say? An excerpt in one of his necessary facets. So I wonder if the reason his evil is like these short, explosive, like evil thoughts that don't ever really actually escalate versus his greed personified being something that's completely destructive. This is a reflection on Vegapunk himself. I'll get into all of this in my Vegapunk video, but I think it's plain and it is displayed well in this arc that his greed, his desire to invent as much as he can, to do as much of his time as he can, to build out as much as he can and not really think about the consequences, just focus on like, what can I accomplish? What can I get? What can I do? How much can I have? Is a larger piece of Vegapunk himself, which is why that's the piece that ended up being isolated and amplified. That's the piece that ended up not working cohesively and destroying everything. Anyway, sorry. It makes sense to me why he would immediately suspect evil, but I think that's the reason greed ended up being the detriment to it all instead of violence or evil. So anyway, good job, Pythagoras the Wise, for figuring out that all of York's intel, all the records that she was syncing, the video footage, it was all falsified. It was all just made up. Plus, Shaka recognized the discrepancy in their research and in the levels of things. So really, Shaka and Pythagoras are kind of the MVP Vegapunks at this point, because without them, York's plan would have succeeded. There would have been no video message. But we got a lot of information, a lot of them deducing exactly what York did and how she was able to accomplish these plans, snatch part of the Mother Flame, use the Sea Beast. And I loved that Stella's initial reaction here was, okay, well, there's still time to flee, Stella. You know, Shaka is looking to protect the Stella, always. That's been what Shaka has done from the beginning. There were even lines earlier on in the arc where Shaka was saying, we should gladly sacrifice ourselves for the Stella. Keeping the Stella alive should be all of our first priority. And Lilith called him a goody two-shoes and was annoyed by that. So Shaka is still just thinking, okay, protect the Stella. And I loved Vegapunk's response here. Then I request an escape ship, one that will evacuate all the residents of Egghead. It's too late for us, however. Secret orders have already gone out to various naval branches. So I love that Shaka is thinking, protect the Stella, and Vegapunk, Stella, says, good, I'm glad we have a ship. Protect the people. We're gone. That's over. So what do we do now? I love this line and this panel close-up of Vegapunk saying, if I must die, it won't be for nothing. So that's when they create the video feed. That's when they, oh, sorry, I just caught a glimpse of the giant head floating in the water with the hair. I just don't know why there had to be hair. I just expected a brain, not the top of his head. Hairy head. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, it was also a great panel when he apologized to them. I'm sorry that you're stuck in this situation too. And both Shaka and Pythagoras are like, no, we're you. We want this too. Like, we're thinking the same thing. And that is also really interesting that they were thinking that the cloud plant it might be the foundation of humanity's survival. So they're thinking the world is sinking, so humanity lives on the clouds. Never even crossed my mind. Never even crossed my mind that there are Sky Islands and Egghead actively uses the same technology, the same, I don't know, resources. So they could possibly, I mean, Lilith lives on, could possibly use that same technology to create all Sky Islands. I mean, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope that we just stop the world from completely sinking. But I do like that resourcefulness of just being like, obviously we just have to adapt. So they erased their memories, which does make sense. They didn't want York to sync with their memories. They didn't want to have to create dummy memories to sync up like York did, because that got York caught. So they don't want to just mimic her tactics and hope she doesn't notice. Although she might not, but she might. She might be looking out for them to see if they catch on to her plan. So they have to erase their memories so that York is none the wiser, write themselves a letter to the letter. Golly. Write themselves a letter so that they understand at least somewhat what's going on. But another line that I absolutely loved in this chapter. However, our plans have already been laid, and the utter disaster that awaits just around the corner is none other than our ultimate triumph. Oh, I love that line so much. The fact that Vegapunk is looking death right in the face. Like, it's done. I don't have a way out. There is no escape plan. This is it. I'm dying. I'm going to be killed. But my death is not going to be for nothing. And I will use the resources I have to get the message out to the world so that they can be warned. And it's going to be the end of me that is going to be my greatest triumph, my greatest accomplishment. Not something selfish, something for the world. And Vegapunk has had very good intentions with his dreams and with his inventions and with his desire to help the world. But there's also, there's a lot to discuss about Vegapunk. But what a fantastic final conclusion of what he can accomplish in the very end. Absolutely love it. I gotta say though, and I was told that the scans didn't say the same thing, so if you are just a scans reader, I want you to know that this is what I read from the letter. There are many surprises in store for you. LOL. Like the idea of this old man. This old inventor man writing to himself. Like, you're gonna wake up confused, having lost 2 weeks of your memory. You are going to wake up and go, what is going on? And I'm just gonna be like, you're gonna be surprised, lol. Like, it's just really funny to me. Anyway, I also loved this quick recap of what the arc brought. That we have Emperor of the Sea is here. What? CP0 has landed. What? Navy battleships. What? Admiral Kizaru. And also an elder. What? It was such a great comedic recap of like exactly what the arc was. Just one after another, more people arriving to just make you go, oh my goodness, this is huge. Anyway, now we get to talk about Vegapunk when he was rushing in to protect Bonnie. And he told Sanji and Atlas and Frankie that they need to leave him down there. You know, I want you to know, though we're going down to save Bonnie, I intend to remain down there. Just leave me down there to perish. So Frankie and Sanji heard that he was meant to perish. And it didn't sit right with Sanji. Like, he couldn't do it. I really want to go back I'm going to, because I'm rereading the arc right now. So I will, when I go back and reread those chapters of Sanji really like struggling with Vegapunk and being unwilling to leave him behind and picking up his body despite, we all saw the flatline for chapters. There was a flatline. So he was gone. And here Sanji is just like, get up, old man. Like, it didn't sit right with him. He couldn't accept this as what was happening. And I don't know, I feel like that just shows a lot of compassion in Sanji. It shows that just leaving a man behind, even if that is his explicit wish, is not something that he can really just accept. Okay, now we have the final panel. I know you've been waiting for T-Scene's art. This is it. This was what she drew. Always, 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 I adore T-Scene's work and perspective. This big celebration. We're entering Elbaf, so what does she show us but a whole bunch of giant arms, a whole bunch of giant swords raised up, axes held high, drinks in hand, and Usopp, the one that's been waiting the longest and the most excitedly, aside from Luffy, but we've all been looking at Usopp, as the one excited to get to Elbaf and really feeling a connection with the spirit of giants. Here he is celebrating front and center along with these men that are going to bring him into Elbaf, and Luffy just looking dead. He is It's just like smiling but dying. T-Scene once again apologizes for having less time for her art piece this week. So please do show her love in the comments, because I seriously never can tell when she doesn't have time, because her art pieces are always so extraordinary. Anyway, when I was doing my reading, one of my patrons pointed out, and I love this, how beautiful it is that that Dory and Bragi were the ones that sparked that desire to go to Elbaf and Usopp and Luffy, and Dory and Bragi are now the ones that are going to escort them into Elbaf as brothers. Like, isn't that so cool? I absolutely love that. So I said at the beginning of the chapter that this didn't feel like the final chapter of Egghead to me, even though they did leave the island. So, I mean, you definitely could use that as the marker of the end of the arc. I think I said chapter, end of the arc. But it doesn't completely feel like it to me, because this was such an information chapter. It was, okay, let me tie up loose ends. Let me explain to you some holes in your understanding of strategically what happened here. Here you go. There's the information. And then like a celebration panel at the end. So it doesn't feel like an explosive ending, or it doesn't feel like it feels more bittersweet, even a little bit melancholy of an ending, even though we did celebrate at the end. But I mean, the chapter as a whole had that tone to it, which still would be a perfectly fine final chapter for Egghead. But it just doesn't tonally feel like a final chapter of an arc to me. Plus, we do still have Emmett and Saturn on the island, and I am still curious. You know, Saturn has access to Vegapunk's brain, has access to all of the information on the Void Century and on everything, really. I mean, Saturn has free reign of so much information right now that Emmett either needs to destroy Saturn in order to keep that from him and just continue protecting this island, or I think Saturn is going to capture Emmett and take him back to be destroyed. But either way, we have this kind of standoff happening right now that I would love a conclusion to. Oda doesn't, you know, sometimes he gives those kinds of conclusions quickly. Sometimes we cut away for a long time and then come back. Like, that's what we did with Kizaru. With Kuzan and Akainu, they had their face off, and it wasn't until a while later that Kuzan let us know exactly what happened. And that might be what's happening here. Oda might take his time to let us know what that standoff and how that standoff ends up concluding. I just, would like to know now. It'd be cool if we got one more chapter where we resolved that. I actually still have a lot of questions left unanswered about that were posed in Egghead, but that also too is not uncommon for the conclusion of an arc. Either way, I do have a pretty big project coming. I actually have several end of arc videos that I've been working on, and I'm really excited to get them to you. One in particular, what I'll say is, if you enjoyed the Wano sock puppet summary, I'm not doing it again, but I am doing something equally stupid as the Egghead summary. So that is what I'm going to be working on this week. And then depending on if this next chapter is, going to be one more chapter for Egghead or not, you'll get the dumb video soon. I mean the summary video. You'll get the summary video soon. Anyway, I would love to hear what you thought about the chapter. Did you enjoy it? Do you think it's the end of the arc? I would love to discuss more. I'll chat with you more in the comments, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.